I was in Psalm 29 this morning, and when I was reading through it, I felt the Spirit of God all over me because of what he is saying in these few verses. David writes this crazy poem, and when I was reading it, I knew I had to do a video and share with you guys what this poem of praise reveals and what it means for Christians today. Before we get started though, if you would, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, hit the bell, get notifications. We're doing videos pretty much every week, if not multiple times a week. So you don't want to miss any of the new videos that come up. But Psalms 29, we're going to go ahead and dig into it. It has some meat there. I got the King James Version, and I've got the Passion Translation. I know some people don't like the Passion Translation. That's okay. That's why I've got the King James. I use a lot of different versions to study with. You know, I read out of the Septuagint, which is the earliest translation from Hebrew to Greek, and they've translated from Greek to English. So I use just a lot of stuff to study with because I think it's important. We have a bunch of different versions for a reason, and we can get a better understanding of what Scripture is saying, I believe. You may not agree with that, which is okay. But let's talk about Psalm 29 and what David writes. He starts off saying, "Proclaim his majesty, all you mighty champions, you sons of Almighty God, giving all the glory and strength back to him." This is something that really stands out to me right off. He's saying proclaim his majesty, meaning publicly declare the royal power of God. All of you sons of God. And when this says sons of God, this is speaking of women, because when the Bible talks about the bride of Christ, you know, men assume the role of a bride at that point. So don't let that get weird, because I'll just say sons and I talk about brides, and I'm talking about women and men at the same time. So if you're a Christian, you're a son. If you're a Christian, you're a bride, all at the same time. So he says, proclaim his majesty. Tell everyone in public how powerful God is, giving all the glory and strength back to him. So this is what's crazy to me. Proclaiming his royal power, we must be demonstrating that power in order to give that back to him. So the way we walk around in public, the way we walk in our life, must demonstrate a glory and strength that we give back to the Lord. So meaning, he gives us a glory to carry and a strength to carry, to walk in, but he only gives this to us so that we can give it back to him publicly. Proclaiming his power publicly. Be in awe before his majesty, be in awe before such power and might. Come worship wonderful Yahweh, arrayed in all his splendor, bowing in worship as he appears in his holy beauty. Give him the honor due his name. So we go from proclaiming his royal power to now coming before him in awe and wonder of who he is. So us giving his glory back to him, us giving his strength back to him, looks like this: being in awe before him, worshiping him because he is holy. Worship him wearing the holy garments of your holy priestly calling. This to me is such a powerful verse, because it says worship him wearing the garments of your holy priestly calling. The King James says worship him in the beauty of holiness. So we actually can worship him in a place that is in perfect holiness, because it's Him who gives us that holiness to wear as we worship Him. But that only comes through abiding with Him. All throughout the New Testament, we see how Christians are pretty much commanded to live in perfect holiness. It's possible, but it's not possible for you to do unless Christ is doing it for you. So it is only possible because of what Christ has done on the cross and His resurrection. Now we can live in the holiness that He calls us to, because we aren't doing it ourselves, but we are literally just receiving it. He is giving us the holiness to wear. So this holiness is body and spirit. And we can walk in the holiness we can walk in holiness in our body and in our spirit. And while we're doing this, we're actually giving the glory and strength back to God and honor to who He is. And we're doing this in a public manner because we are publicly displaying and publicly declaring His royal power and declaring who He is. We're proclaiming His kingdom. So everything was created holy, and all will be eternally holy, except for the ones who reject Jesus. It is Jesus alone that makes us holy. John says, in the beginning was the Word was with God. You know, everything was created through the Word. So it is the Word Himself, Jesus Christ, that created us to be holy, and in eternity to be holy. But only if we accept Him, because it's only Him that can give us this holiness. Other than that, if we reject Him, we do not have that holiness. Literally in those first two verses, it is just powerful. The next few verses really just talk about the voice of the Lord. And I love when David talks about the voice of the Lord here, describing His voice as thunderous. And I'm going to read this and just listen to how magnificent God's voice is and how strong and powerful it is. David writes, the voice of the Lord echoes through the skies and the seas. One, it echoes. He didn't write it echoed or it will echo, but it is echoing. That means His voice is continuously speaking. The glory God reigns as He thunders in the clouds. So powerful His voice, so brilliant and bright. How majestic as He thunders over the great waters. So we see that thunders are representative of His voice. And it says He thunders over great waters. In this context, great waters represents humanity. So He is constantly speaking through the seas and the skies. The very vibrations of God's voice is moving through the air and through the water of this earth. And He is speaking over humanity constantly. This is still thunders over humanity, over great waters. Not will thunder or has thundered, thunders, speaking. His tympanic thunder topples the strongest of trees. His symphonic sound splinters the mighty forests. Now He moves Zion's mountains by the might of His voice, shaking the snowy peaks with His ear-splitting sound. The lightning fire flashes, striking as He speaks. God reveals Himself when He makes the fault lines quake, shaking deserts, speaking His voice. God's mighty voice makes the deer to give birth, and His thunderbolt lays the forest bare. In biblical text, a lot of times strong men, kings, were talked about as strong trees. And this is saying that when He speaks, the strongest of the strong of this earth fall. When God speaks, the strongest of the strong fall. Meaning, when you hear His voice and you know that is His voice, you fall. There is nothing left to do because you can't, because all of a sudden you see the majesty, you see the might, the power of His voice. And He talks about how His voice is so powerful just in this scripture. I love the way David writes, especially in his poetry and his psalms and everything. And now he says, in His temple all fall before Him, with each one shouting, glory, glory, the God of glory. This really stuck to me because This is people who hear his voice and have now been revealed that it is God's voice, fall before him, shouting, "Glory, glory, the God of glory." The Septuagint reads, "Those who give him glory, he carries to his house," meaning, I am giving him the glory, and I have heard his voice, so I can't do anything but fall before him and say, "Glory, glory, glory, God, you are so glorious." And at that moment, I have surrendered all, and it's him who picks me up and carries me forward. Nothing I can do. As soon as I hear his voice, I fall at his feet. That's what this is saying. When his voice is revealed to you, you will fall at his feet, and there's nothing else you can do but let him carry you into his house. Oh my goodness. This is ridiculous. At the very last verse, David writes, "This is the one who gives his strength and might to his people." We just talked about at the very beginning the glory and strength that is given back to him. David ends saying, this is the God. All of what you've just read, all of what I've just written, this is the God that gives his strength and might to his people. How? I am laying before his feet saying, "Glory, glory." I can't walk. He has to pick me up and carry me, my friends. When he is carrying you, he has given you all of his power and all of his glory. Only when we surrender to the Lord and lean on him as our lover in our weakness, then he is able to pick us up. And when we are in his arms, his might and his glory has been given to us. Then David writes, "This is the Lord giving us his kiss of peace." Him picking us up and carrying us to his house is his kiss of peace. Why? Because we have nothing and we are laid completely trusting in him, knowing that he is carrying us with him. Where else can we find peace like that? But what's great about this chapter is from the very beginning we see something happening. We're reading that the Lord's voice is destroying the trees, earthquakes, fire, lightning storms. This is what the voice of the Lord is doing, how powerful it is. But even though this chapter begins with a storm, it ends with God bringing his people peace by picking them up and carrying them into his house. This is probably one of my favorite chapters of the Bible since I've been reading it this morning. But I just want to encourage you, proudly proclaim his royal power. Proudly proclaim his majesty. Give him glory. What he gives you, give back to him. And when he gives this to you, let him carry you. When you hear his voice, when his voice is revealed to you, fall at his feet and say glory, and let him pick you up and carry you into his house. Because my friends, that is where strength and peace is found. Guys, I really hope this blessed you as much as it's blessed me. If you like this video, please just give me a like, leave a comment on your thoughts and maybe some revelations that you had while you're watching this that you would like to share with me. I'd love to hear your revelations also. I'd love to hear what the Lord is speaking to you guys. So bless you. I hope you are completely enamored by the glory of God today.